This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
You are now about to start recording the shir. When you are finished, please hang up.
Welcome, everyone. A very special day today, indeed. Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer has many different angles. The Ramah, who didn't know when he spoke about Lag BaOmer that Lag BaOmer would be a day that was also dedicated to him, because it was in Krakow. It was a big pilgrimage because it was the Ramah's yahrzeit as well. So later on, it became that people that didn't go to Meron, so they went to the Ramah. But the Ramah in Shulchan Aruch says that B'yom Lamed Gimel BaOmer Marbin K'tzas B'Simcha, we increase some merriment. Shebiyom Zeh Posku Talmidei Rabbi Akiva Melamos. Because on this day, the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva stopped to die. 24,000 Talmidim died of diphtheria, of the worst of 906 deaths, and they stopped. So it's a day of happiness. So I mentioned on Shabbos that the Pri Chodesh asks, that's not something to be happy about. They were wiped out to a man. So that means that it was a total wipeout. The only reason they stopped dying is because nobody left. So why is that a day of happiness? That's the Pri Chodesh's question. It's interesting that the Ramah MiPano gives an interesting answer. He says that Rabbi Akiva was also supposed to die. Because a Rebbe is nitfas, is held accountable for the sins of his Talmidim. The Talmidim were not koved zelazet. They didn't give proper respect one to another. So the Rebbe is held accountable. So Rabbi Akiva was also supposed to die, and then there would have been nobody to teach the 5 great Talmidim in the south. So Rabbi Akiva was spared, and Ramah MiPano says that therefore Lag BaOmer is a day that we celebrate the fact that Hashem spared Rabbi Akiva. So according to Ramah MiPano, it's a day where we celebrate Rabbi Akiva. The Chidah, as I mentioned on Shabbos, says that we celebrate the fact that Rabbi Akiva didn't give up hope. He lost the 24,000 Talmidim. Most people, if they lose 24,000 Talmidim, they're fit for an insane asylum. I mean, here he dedicated 24 years, he cultivated 24,000 Talmidim, and they all died horribly. One would think that he would collapse under the loss, and he didn't. It's interesting, Nehemiah, my son Nehemiah, didn't know this was a chidah. He came into the class this morning, he teaches 4th grade in Darche. He came into the class and he told everybody he wants them to take out a piece of paper and make a black dot in the middle of the paper. And then he said to them, I want everybody to tell me what you see. And one after another, the boys said, Rebbe, we see a black dot. So then he said that Rabbi Akiva lost 24,000 Talmidim, and he didn't give up hope. So he said, you all noticed the black dot. Why didn't you say with a lot of white around it? Everybody notices and focuses on the black dot. But what about all the white around it? Rabbi Akiva saw there was yet more to be done. And by the way, this idea of not giving up, you know who else was a tremendous candidate to give up in life? Yaakov Avinu. I mean, Yaakov Avinu lost his favorite wife, Rachel, in her 30s. His second main wife, Leah, died in her 40s. Before he got married, he was traveling with a large wealth to get married, and Eliphaz, his nephew, came and robbed him of everything, took even the clothes off his back, and almost killed him. And yet after that, he was able to learn 14 years undisturbed in Shem V'Ever. His daughter was violated. Dinah was violated. Yosef was abducted. And yet he kept on being the Yaakov Avinu. We persevere. Yiyush Yishalei Midas. To give up is only if you're not using your head. Okay. There are others that learn that the simcha of Lag BaOmer was instead he found 5 Talmidim. You know, one of the 5 Talmidim was Rameir. Stam Mishnah Rameir. Whatever we have in Shas, Achei Rimon, that's Rav Meir. Rav Meir, an anonymous Mishnah in Shas, Rav Meir. So he found the 5 Talmidim. And you know, when a Rebbe gets a Talmud, that's a matter of great simcha. I can tell you that by me, when I get a new Talmud, no matter what he is. No matter what he is. Right? I get a new Talmud, to me, it's like having a child. It says, "V'shinantam uvanecha elu hatalmidim." It's a tremendous simcha to have a Talmud. He found the 5 Talmidim in the south, and from that, Klal Yisrael was built. Now, I told you that there's many angles to Lag BaOmer. I'm going to tell you an interesting thing. The day of the week that Lag BaOmer falls out on is the same day of the week of the year that Zayin Adar falls out on. Always. This year Zayin Adar was Sunday. If you remember, it was a Sunday. And Zayin Adar is a Sunday, and Lag BaOmer is a Sunday, and it's the same day that the Ushpizin of Moshe falls out. This year, the Ushpizin of Moshe fell out on a Sunday. It's always that way. Because it's brought down that Rav Shimon Bar Yochai was a nitzutz he had from the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, to prove it, and this is amazing, Lag BaOmer, without the vav, Lag BaOmer is exactly B'gematria 345, Moshe. It's exactly B'gematria. Lag BaOmer is B'gematria Moshe. You can't make that up. It's an amazing thing. Now, the Chassam Sofer, just to show you how many facets there are to Lag BaOmer, the Chassam Sofer says the first day that the miraculous mon fell was on Lag BaOmer. Because we know that on Pesach Sheni, we finished the matzah, 30 days the matzah lasted, then we went 3 days without eating, and after the 3 days without eating, the next day was the month. So the Chassam Sofer says that on Lag BaOmer we also celebrate the eating of man. One of the reasons that in certain places they give out candy on Lag BaOmer is for this reason, because we know that the man tasted like whatever you wanted, so of course the children had a lot of candy, it tasted like whatever they wanted. So Mamela, that's an Indian to give out sweets and nice things. I also told you this morning, there's a minute that some people have that they don't eat eggs, at least whole eggs, because since Rav Shimon Bar Yochai didn't want it to be a day of Avelis, he wanted it to be a day of Hilula, so some people don't eat eggs. Okay. There's a marked difference between the observance of this yahrzeit and other yahrzeit of tzaddikim. A very big difference. What's the matter? Yeah. There's a, thank you, Les. There's a big difference between other yahrzeits of tzaddikim and this one. On the yahrzeit of tzaddikim, we fast. On Zayin Adar, we say Tachlim. Why by Rav Shimon Bar Yochai we don't fast and we don't say Tachlim? What's about Hilula to Rav Shimon Bar Yochai? So we know that, first of all, today has always been a day of big Yeshuas, big salvation. Stories abound of people who couldn't have children, who went to Meron and davened by the kever of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai and was zeichet to have children. There's the whole lexicon of stories. The Gemara says an interesting thing. We learn it and we see it usually in a totally different vein. The Gemara says throughout Shas, Kedayu Rav Shimon lismay chalav b'shas adchat. Now when Barry learns that Gemara, Barry learns it to mean that although we don't paskin like him l'chatchila, but Kedayu Rav Shimon lismay chalav b'shas adchat. However, it has another meaning. And that is that Rab Shimon is worthy to rely on in a time of pressure, in a time of trouble. And indeed, throughout the day, I was saying, Hashem, please, in the schus of the Heilig Getana Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, send a refuah in Yeshua to Miriam Liba Bas Devorah. The whole day I'm saying it and I'm thinking it. Kedayu Rab Shimon lismay chalav b'shas atchak. You know, there are famous pizmonim. There are famous songs. If you go to the bonfires, you'll hear them singing Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. There's famous songs. In that pizmon, it says, Devorav oisim peiros, his words accomplish fruits, Botel kama gezeres. It canceled many gezeres. There's an unbelievable zayah. In the era of Lud, in the city of Lud, there was a magefa, there was a plague. And Rab Shimon Bar Yochai was mevatel it with words. The Zohar says, in this vein, Rab Shimon Bar Yochai was greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. Because when Moshe Rabbeinu had to stop the plague, he had to use ketairos. He had to use incense. While Rab Shimon Bar Yochai was able to do it just with words. There's a Yeshalmi in Shvias. It's a scary Yeshalmi. Yeshalmi in Shvias that says that Rab Shimon Bar Yochai was Mitar Ir Shel Tveria. He made the city of Tveria tar for Kahan. He removed all Mesim from the city of Tveria. It was Mitar. So there was a Kusi that wanted to cause Rab Shimon Bar Yochai trouble, and surreptitiously he buried a dead body somewhere in Tveria in order to show that Rab Shimon Bar Yochai doesn't know what's going on. You know, he says that it's tar, he's going to unmask him. So Rab Shimon Bar Yochai saw this Kusi. This is a Ferish Yeshalmi. He saw this Kusi, and he said, Yordu el yoinim v'yalu tachtonim. Let those that are up here go down there, and those that are down there come up here. And the mace that the Kusi surreptitiously buried got up, and the Kusi died in his place. Everybody saw it. And this is Yerushalmi in Shvias, in the 9th parak of Shvias. This is what we're talking about Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, when we say the Heilige Tana, the Tana Elikai, Rab Shimon Bar Yochai. So we all know that, let me tell you a story, because some of you might not be familiar with it. It's a Gemara in Shabbos, Lamed Gimel Amud Beis, Lamed Gimel Lag, right? Lamed Gimel Amud Beis, Lamed Daled. Gemara in Shabbos tells us that there was a conversation. Reb Yehuda said that we have to thank the Romans because they built bridges for us, they built marketplaces, and they built bathhouses. Reb Yossi, the great Reb Yossi, was quiet. Reb Shimon said, thank the Romans. Bridges they built to collect taxes. Bathhouses they created for their own rejuvenation. And markets they created to make money. There was a bad guy over there, a snitch, a rat, by the name of Yehuda ben Gerim. And he went and told over to the Romans what happened. So the Romans said, Yehuda that spoke in our praise, he should become the Rosh HaMedabrim B'chol Makom. He should speak first all the time. Yossi that was quiet, he should be exiled to Tzipor. Shimon, who spoke about us disparagingly, he should be killed. So Reb Shimon Bar Yochai went and ran to hide in the Beis HaMedrash. When they sought him out in the Beis HaMedrash, he went and hid in a cave, and he stayed in the cave for 12 years. After that, he came out, but he couldn't tolerate when he saw people occupied in this world. He said they're forsaking the Torah and they're occupied in this world. Hashem said, I didn't tell you to come out to destroy my world. So he sent them back in the cave for another year, and then he came out and he had a perspective where he could tolerate the world. That's the story in the Gemara. Now, what did he do in the cave when he was in the cave? So the Chazal tell us that miraculously in the cave a carob tree grew, and there was a well of water, and he would take off his clothing and submerge himself in sand and only put on the clothing that it shouldn't rot only when he davened. And he would stay submerged in the sand and learn the whole day. Once a day, Eliyahu Hanavi would visit him, and he revealed to him the Torah's Hanister, the esoteric teachings of the Torah. And that's the whole thing that we light the bonfires, because on this day was revealed the great light of the Torah's Hanister. He wrote the Zohar, he's the author of the Zohar, of the Kabbalah, and he revealed the Torah of Nister. However, what do we have to celebrate the Torah's Hanister? What do we know from the Torah's Hanister? Everybody's dancing. What do we know from the Torah's Hanister? It's not just the Torah's Hanister. It says that before he went into the cave, his son-in-law, the venerable Rav Pinchas ben Yair, he would ask his son-in-law a question, and his son-in-law would give him 12 answers. After he came out of the cave, his son-in-law would ask him a question, and he would give his son-in-law 24 answers. So it wasn't just in the Torah's Hanister, it was also the Torah Hanigla, the regular learning, how he accomplished what he accomplished. Now, when he came out, his body, because it was submerged in the sand for all those years, was full of scabs. So his son-in-law, Rav Pinchas ben Yair, said, "Oily, woe is me that I see you like this." And he said, "Woe is me if you wouldn't see me like this." What does that mean? He said, the scabs represent my amelus b'Torah, my toil in learning. And because of this, I became so great. So let me tell you an interesting thing. There's a famous machlokes in Sanhedrin. Soon we're going to be learning in the Daf Yomi Sanhedrin, one of the most fascinating Masechtas in Shas. There's a famous machlokes between Rebbe and Antoninus. When is the Yetzer Hara introduced, the evil inclination introduced into the fetus? So Rebbe said he was introduced at the time of conception, the time of creation. And Antoninus says, no, at the time when the child comes out from the mother's womb. And Rebbe says, you know what? I agree with you. Because if it would be from the time of conception, then the child would break out of the womb before its time, because it has a Yetzer Hara, which I always say, you see from this that the Yetzer Hara means bad. If we break out before the womb, we die. It's the same Yetzer Hara that gets people to smoke, same Yetzer Hara that gets people to talk in shul. The Yetzer Hara means to do us bad. So the question, though, is what's the kasha? The baby is learning Torah in its mother's womb. Why won't the Torah protect it from that? Torah is making from the Yetzer Hara. The answer is the only Torah that protects is Torah with amelus, Torah with toil. The baby's Torah is not with toil, it's spoon-fed by the Malach. You know, when you come to a shir after a long day, and you got to keep your eyes open, that's amelus. I told you once that Rav Schwab once asked me, I had 250 people in my shir in the Aguda 14th Avenue. Rav Schwab asked me, how could a Maggid shir of 250 people learn Torah Lishma? You say a kasha, you say a pshat, you feel good about it. How can you learn Torah Lishma? So Rav Schwab told me, you can't. You can't. What are you talking about? It's a high. You're saying a pshat, you're telling them, you can't. He says, but all those people that come after work and they're fighting to keep their eyes open, they're learning Torah Lishma, and you're causing it. That's your Torah Lishma. That's what Rav Schwab told me. That's your Torah Lishma. But anyway, I'm going to repeat it very quickly, just to have it on the tape, on TorahAnytime.com, on Kol HaLashon, on Facebook, just to have it there. The Chidush Rim's pshat. The Chidush Rim says that this is to be mechaper in the Chet of Yosef. Why? It says, who are the three players? Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Shimon. He says, first he brings a Rashi in Bava Metzia that Yossi and Yosef are the same. So he says, Yehuda was rewarded by the Romans to be Rosh HaMedabrim B'chol Makom, to be the one that speaks first. Why? because Yehuda took the lead and said, let's not kill Yosef. Ma beta! What would be profit if we kill him? So he took the lead, he was rewarded. Yosef was Yosef. Yosef spoke to Dibara. He got the ball started by speaking the evil tidings to his father about the Shvatim. So what's the punishment of somebody who speaks Lashon Hara? Tzaras, right? That tzaras means you're exiled out of the three camps. You're isolated. Ooh. So Yosef was exiled to Tzipori. Why Tzipori? Because when the Mitzvah gets purified, he has to bring Tziporim, he has to bring birds. We might add, the Chiddush Urim doesn't say this, that's probably why, oh no, and then, who got punished? Reb Shimon bar Yochai. Who was the ringleader? Shimon. Shimon said, look, the dreamer is coming, right? So he was the one that started the ball rolling to do away Yosef. So therefore, Reb Shimon was mechaper for Shimon, and he was put, just like Yosef was put in a dungeon for over a decade, he was put in a dungeon for over a decade. And just like they stripped Yosef of his clothing, right? They took off his clothes when they put him in the bar, so Reb Shimon had to take off his clothing and go into the sand. What's scary about this is the fact, how many kaparas do we need for Mechiras Yosef? How many kaparas? We sold Yosef as a slave 117 years. All of us were slaves in Egypt. Then we had Asar Huruge Malchus, the 10 martyrs. Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, the 10 martyrs. Then we had the 10 sons of Rabbi Yochanan dying. And now we see we have this whole incident with Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. That's how bad it is to talk about people. And that comes on the heels of the 24,000 disciples of Rabbi Kiva dying, the Mashal says, because they spoke Lashon Hara. It's all connected. What was the end? What was the fate of Yehuda ben Gerim? What happened to Yehuda? Remember the rat? Remember the snitch? What happened to Yehuda ben Gerim? So when Reb Shimon bar Yochai, 13 years later, came out of the cave, he met him. He said, this one is still alive? He looked at him, and he became a galat samas. He became a bag of bones. Chida says he didn't just die, because if he died, then the government will once again say that Reb Shimon bar Yochai is up to tricks and he took vengeance on him. He became a bag of bones as if he was dead for a long time, so they couldn't pin it on Reb Shimon bar Yochai. That's the way the Chida learns. But there's a big kasha. We would think that Yehuda ben Gerim should get a big yashikayah. Yehuda ben Gerim caused that Shimon bar Yochai should learn for all these years and reveal the Torah's Nista to the world. And to have a day like Lag BaOmer, we would think, wow, look what Yehuda ben Gerim accomplished. The answer is that Paro already tried that trick. Paro said, don't punish me. Look what I did, Rabbi Shalom. I made you Kalal Yisrael. You forged them in my country, in the Kurab Azel. And I fulfilled what you wanted. You said, didn't I do a good job? The thing is, you didn't do it for that reason. If you don't do it for that reason, you don't deserve credit. Adrabah, you deserve patch. People say, yeah, but you know what I did caused good. You have to have the right reason. Kavana is a very big thing. I want to conclude. There's a lot of things. They go and they dance. Rebbe Elyashiv, in his over 100 years in Eretz Yisrael, made it a point to say that he never went to the kever of Reb Shimon bar Yochai. Rebbe Elyashiv said that Reb Shimon bar Yochai is mentioned 2,245 times in Shas. Now, if you have an idea that there's 2,711 blot in Shas, that means that Reb Shimon is mentioned on almost every page. Right? It's not almost every page, because some pages he's mentioned a bunch of times, but he's mentioned more than 2 out of every 3 pages. In Mishnayos, he's mentioned 366 times. Rebbe Elyashiv used to say, I go see Reb Shimon bar Yochai every time I learn Gemara. That's how I go. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, the famous mashgiach of Mirzek Tzadik L'Brachas Chutz Yogan Alein, the same thing as Rebbe Elyashiv. He said, one time I went to Meron, And he said, I went, but I couldn't bring myself to go to the Tzion. I got back into the car and went back. He said, how could I face the Heilige Tanner of Shimon Bar Yochai? Well, we just said that he's a Bala Yeshuas, a Bala Refuas. When we learn Reb Shimon in the Gemara, and again, I asked the Rebbeinu Shalom that on this day, where we evoke the schus of the Heilige Tanner of Shimon Bar Yochai, that it says in the Pismim, Oisa Peiris, Devar of Oisa Peiris, Batal Kama Gezeris. You should be Mavatal the Gezeris on Miriam Liba Bas Devara and other Chaylim. They should have a refuah shalema b'sech shachal Yisrael.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.